Okay. So yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to reconnect and to be back and to like, it's so cool how roads like parallel and then they converge and then they parallel and converge. But yeah, so I know Dr. Nina from what I think I was trying to figure out this morning. I think it's about 10 to 18, or no, 18 to 19 years ago, just because my oldest son is 19 and I started working in the same place that she was working when he was 3 months old. So
Oh, I went to your wedding, so it was before that.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Wedding. Yes. We
Okay, we
were
go way back.
twins. We were both starting out
Oh,
at the place we will not mention because it was a total disaster, and we basically learned what not to say and what not to do, which is sometimes even a better lesson than
I know, right? I know, I agree. Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, it was a great learning
Simi
experience. Yeah.
Valley Country Club. I remember I was
Oh,
there.
oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that it's been a while. Okay, well, awesome. I'm glad you remember. But yeah, we were both starting out, and I think you were doing your doctorate at the time, right? Do you remember?
Yes, I was still like a candidate, and I was
Mhm.
doing an internship in this eating disorder program. So I had two internships, and one of them was a program where that's how I met Cynthia. And yes, what an amazingly small world to see you reemerge in Facebook. So great to be
I
here
know.
and great to hear
Yeah.
with everyone.
Yeah, I know, like that word reemerge. It's true. I know we kind of both, I guess, found each other that way, which was really neat. And as you can see in her background, she has all kinds of books that she's written too in the process of us,
Mhm.
you know, growing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So just briefly, as I'm looking at them, so tell us a little bit about like your journey with the book. So which one's the first one
The
that you
first
wrote?
one is, oh, it's actually somewhere else. It's called Food for Thought. So I've written an academic, like scholarly book called Food for Thought: Perspectives on Eating Disorders. And I, presented at the American Psychoanalytic Institute. And I've done all these like scholarly books: Beyond the
Mhm.
Primal Addiction, a new one, Food Matters, is coming out actually this Thursday.
Yay.
Then I also wanted to speak to people. I didn't just want to talk about eating
Mm.
disorders and all that. I wanted to give them actionable steps, what to do. And I've had a show on LA Talk Radio for 7 years, and people would say, well, where can I read about what you're talking about? And I said, well, it doesn't exist. So I said,
Oh,
okay, well, clearly I need to write it. So this
right.
is the result of the binge cure, which
Ah.
I which is my mainstream book, where I take the psychoanalytic principles that I use and make them accessible and actionable, so that you can, not just have food for thought, but actually know what to do differently. And
Got it.
I'm really passionate about that. And I call it the binge cure, because there is so much misinformation about recovery. Like, oh, I've got to be in recovery, which sounds
Mm.
terrible to me. I want you to wake up and think about your day, not your diet. So recovery is just, oh, every day I'm going to wake up and be good, versus I'm going to wake up and think about my day. And recovery
Yeah.
is, I'm always in it. I'm in recovery.
Mhm.
Liberation, which is what I believe in, liberation is when it's something you used to do, is struggle with food. Now it's in your rear view mirror. It's like you had the flu. You're
Right.
over the flu. You're not in recovery from the flu, right? You're
Oh
done.
no. Yeah.
And that,
No, I love it.
yeah,
Mhm.
so that's why my binge cure method is, what I developed, because I want people to know that there is absolutely a different way, other than struggling on a daily basis and feeling bad about yourself and
Mm.
thinking it's about control or willpower or even about food.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's the bottom line, right? I know when we first were connecting, I think the one thing that you just mentioned that spoke to me when we first started connecting was that whole idea of you're just mentioning about recovery. So for me, how I define recovery is exactly how you define recovery. It's not living in it. It's something that happened in the past. You've learned from, you've grown from, and now you're in healed or healing. And now you can do it, continue your life with that new mindset. I don't know how to describe it, that new perspective. And then, and that's it. And just keep growing. We're always growing and changing. But yeah, that was a big one because I worked in other, working on these programs we've worked in and recovery. And it's like we were always stuck in recovery. It's like, okay, when's the out? How do we move forward? So yeah, I love it.
And I know from my personal as well as professional experience, and I once considered myself the poster child for eating disorders. I know there is a such thing as total liberation, because there was a time when if someone had said, hey, there will be one day where you are not waking up and thinking about what you're going to eat, what you're not going to eat, what you're going to weigh, if you stick to this diet plan, all of those things, you're not going to think any of those things. You're just going to have what you want, and it's not going to bother you, and you're going to be at your most ideal weight. I would have said, what are you smoking? You're on track, because that's impossible. And I'm here, I am living proof. I'm here to tell you and all the people that I've helped all over the world that it is possible. And I've helped people who have struggled for decades.
Yes. Yes. Yay. This is why our roads converged. And everybody listening gets that, because they know that's where I'm at too. So yeah, so with this new, I haven't really introduced you yet, but I will. We're just chatting. I love it. No, but yeah, so with this new, so these women, are obviously in my program, but it's taken me to live out my healing and new life, to live above dieting, to live above the norm, to know enough to understand that there's more to healthy eating than just dieting, like one extreme or the other, but there's a in between where you can live out your healing. So anyway, so that's what I'm teaching them. And at first I was like, oh man, this feels so diety, we're intermittent fasting and it's so weird. So I'm like, I'm going to give it a go. But then it was more about healing or living healed than it is about battling. It's helping your body along instead of battling it. So anyway, okay, so I should introduce you officially. I have this beautiful bio for you. Okay, so Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin is a psychoanalyst, author, and radio host, a globally recognized expert in the field of eating disorders. And like she shared with us already, she's written 4 books and more than 50 articles. Wow. She hosts the Dr. Nina Show, which is a great one, everybody. I'll give you the link for that later. Dr. Nina Show, Outsmart Emotional Eating on LA Talk Radio, and the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina on Voice America. She founded the Binge Cure Method and is dedicated to helping people worldwide overcome binge eating and heal their relationship with food. Awesome. I love it. And you wrote that many, is it articles that you're talking about, like the academic articles?
No, I'm talking about articles I've done for, all kinds of magazines and also Eating Disorder Hope or National Eating Disorders Association, but also Psyche Online and Red Book and Good Housekeeping. And like over the years, I've just done a lot of articles in Beverly Hills Times and
just articles, like all kinds. Yeah.
But all on the topic of eating disorders in some way or another, but I specialize in binge eating disorder.
Got it. Okay. So this is great. This topic, and I wanted you to come on too, because it just adds more depth and value to what we're learning already. And of course, what you do is very different than what I do, but there's a lot of crossover. So I wanted to have you on today to talk about what you do in your specialty and how that can add more value to what we're doing. So in the first, and everybody knows, in the first, I think it's the first few lessons of our course, we talk about mindful eating and intuitive eating. I think it's maybe even lesson 4 or something. And then talking about, more recently, we've been talking about how to handle stress and anxiety, how to keep cortisol low for your health, more of a wellness perspective, and just little tips and tools you can have in your back pocket. If you're feeling like your heart rate's going or you're feeling anxious about something, how to recognize it. And then also little quick things you can do, identify the emotion. Okay, I'm feeling, I don't like the way this feels. And then moving into something that'll make you feel a little bit better. So, but today you can share with us a little bit more depth on that. That's what I use, but that's my limit to my understanding. But what I want to do is just kind of dive in a little bit deeper and allow you to uncover the truth, like more of like the underlying issues of what actually is happening in our subconscious, right? And helping us to identify those things, and then to allow that to help us to move forward in a deeper level with what we're doing. And it's kind of, we talk a lot about, in general, people talk about self-sabotage, but what really is that? Like I've had different people on, and we have different people have different definitions of what that is according to their life experience. Maybe self-sabotage for one person could be that they aren't just ready yet for the information that they're receiving, and then it's too much, and then they do whatever to call it quits. Maybe it's just too overwhelming. But anyway, so that's just kind of some of the things we've talked about. But so beyond that, so also Dr. Nina is also a wife, a mother, a friend, and she's here for her insightful psychoanalysis. I'm not sure how you describe it.
So depth psychology is kind of because everyone thinks Freud when they think of psychoanalysis, but honestly, comparing contemporary psychoanalytic thought to Freud is like comparing a Tesla to a Model T.
Got it.
They're both cars, but boy, are they different.
Yeah. A lot more technology going on. Yeah. So, okay. All right. So I guess we can just start with maybe share with us a little bit about like how you even got to this place. How does this topic, how has it interested you? Did you live through this? Tell us a little bit about your backstory with this.
Okay. So actually on my very first group, not the place where we met, but the very first group that I ever held for women with binge eating disorder, I walked into the room and I was meeting these women for the first time because other people they'd signed up otherwise. And one of them looked at me and said, "What does a skinny bitch like you know about binge eating?"
Mm-hmm.
And what she didn't know was what I told you earlier, is that I considered myself the poster child for eating disorders, because when I was 5 years old, I vividly remember at the age of 5, looking down at my legs. I was a perfectly normal weight kid. The only magazines in our house were like Time magazine, and we weren't watching any TV other than the news because my parents were like ex-hippie college professors, and there was no like modeling of like anything that I'd see as a 5-year-old that would make me body conscious.
Mm-hmm.
I came to believe that if I were thinner, I would somehow be better, and this was the beginning of my obsession with food and my weight, age 5. And by the time I was a teenager, if I look at my journals, every page is filled with numbers, calories I ate, calories I burned, the weight I was, the weight I was going to be one day at that perfect weight. And I was always on some crazy restrictive diet, and eventually my willpower would fail and I would eat the kitchen, and sometimes I'd purge, which is why I was the poster child for eating disorders, like all of them. And it just completely occupied every moment of my life. And finally, in college, I went to therapy, but I went for anxiety. I talked about guys and goals and dreams and fears and all the things, right? Except I never told my therapist what was going on with food. She had no idea she was treating the poster child for eating disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, by the time I left treatment, all my eating disorders were gone for good. And people say, how is it possible that that would happen? And you never talked, not once, not a single time did I ever talk about food.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, it was never about food. Food was never the problem. It was the solution to the problem. In therapy, I learned that I was really hard on myself. I was quite the perfectionist. Nothing I ever did was good enough. And losing weight was my solution. If I were, the perfect weight, maybe I'd be perfect. If I was the perfect weight, maybe I'd get people to like me. I would feel like I'd achieved something. This was not in my conscious awareness, really. I just was obsessed. And so when I changed my inner critic into a friend and started being nicer to myself and identifying what I was feeling and expressing it and responding to myself in a kind, generous, nurturing way, like a friend to myself instead of a critic, everything changed for good. It sounds sort of simplistic, but that's the overarching thing that happened. And that's how I absolutely liberated myself from eating disorders. And by the way, why at age 5 did I suddenly decide that my thighs were too big when I was a perfectly normal weight child with nothing, in my environment that would make me body conscious? Well, like I said, my parents were academic. very quiet, very serious, very scholarly. And I was a kid, and I was always being told, you're too loud, you're too sensitive, you're too much, is basically the message that I was getting. And my 5-year-old mind took that as, you're physically too much. Maybe if you were smaller, you'd be better. So both of these experiences really point to the importance of psychology when it comes to understanding your relationship with food. It really has to do and begins with your relationship with yourself.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's interesting how you're saying, like, just through your time in therapy, it was never about the food. You just went right to the issue, right to the source. So with traditional, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, with traditional diets, and we're talking about like understanding why people kind of yo-yo and go back and forth or so on, with, because it's more emotion, more about how you're feeling than it is about the actual food. Why do you feel like, in your experience, that people are going on diets and then they fail, and then they might try to do it again and in hope that they can do it again, and then they just keep, it seems like self-sabotage, but maybe not. It's probably, it feels like it's deeper than that. So what have you noticed about why diets fail for most people?
Well, I mean, diets fail. There are 3 reasons we binge. One is because we're so hungry and ravenous that once we start, we can't stop. The second is deprivation, and diets are always about deprivation of some kind. And the anticipation or experience of dieting will always make you want something more. And then if you have the black and white thinking that goes with diet mentality, it's, well, I had 2 cookies, I've blown it, the day is ruined, I might as well have all the cookies and then leftover pizza and everything else I haven't been able to eat while I've been on this diet. I'll start my new diet tomorrow. And that leads to binging. And the third reason is when you're turning to food to cope. And this is more like, binge eating disorder is the most prevalent eating disorder there is that nobody knows they have. They think they are food addicts. They think they lack willpower. They think it's about control. No, it's a way of coping. So it's using food in some way to cope. So diets don't look at why you're eating. Diets look only at what you're eating. And it can be easier to focus on what you are eating than on what is eating at you. Example, that same woman, not same woman, that a woman from the same group of the, what's a skinny bitch like, during the course of this group, the whole time she kept saying, no, I just like food too much. I just like food too much, and I don't have any willpower. And if I just got some willpower and I lost those 20 pounds, I'd be good. Because again, the diet industry sells us the illusion that if you just get to some magical weight, why, your life will change completely. If you're shy, you'll be outgoing. If you don't have any friends, you'll be the belle of the ball, right? I mean, it sells this illusion. That's why it's a $60 billion industry predicated on us needing to keep dieting. Anyway, so at the end of this group, 20 minutes before the last, before the group was ending for good, she says this: I've been thinking, maybe if I wasn't so focused on those 20 pounds, maybe it's not 20 pounds I want to lose. Maybe I want to lose my husband. I think maybe if I weren't focused on food, I'd look at the fact that I want to leave my husband, and that's scary. So sometimes we sabotage our weight loss efforts for many reasons. And one of them is a fear of what you will do at that weight. Another is fear of objectification. Many people, especially people who've had experiences with sexual abuse or molestation, feel safer if they feel invisible. And if they, especially women, if we start feeling like we're getting attention, that is frightening. And that gets associated with all kinds of bad things. And so might sabotage ourselves to keep the status quo because it's too scary to think about that kind of attention. Or even, here's another popular one that everyone goes like, what, when I mention it: fear of happiness. And
Mm-hmm.
the standard answer is, of course, I want to be happy. I will be happy when I'm at my ideal weight. I'll be happy when I'm not obsessing about food all the time. I'll be thrilled. I'll be ecstatic. I'll be happier than I can imagine. Yes, consciously. But what about all of the prohibitions against happiness in our culture? It was too good to last.
Mm-hmm.
What if I fail and I gain it back? All the rug's going to be pulled out from underneath you, the shoe's going to drop, all of these things. So we have all these prohibitions against happiness. And sometimes if you're not too happy and you're just trying to get to a place where you're happy about your weight, you feel safe. And this is unconscious. No one's going like, okay, I feel safe if I'm not happy with my weight, so I'm just going to stay this way. Says nobody ever. Consciously, it's let me be happy and get to the weight that I want. Unconsciously, if our unconscious had a voice, it would say, oh, hold on, because if you're happy, something from out of the blue might happen to you. As long as you're not happy about your weight, you're in control. You have mastery over your unhappiness. You're good. So as you can see, there are many levels of understanding of why we do the things we do or why we don't do things we want to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's the same thing battling itself in different directions, right? It's happiness, the desire for it, but the desire to not have it because it's too scary. So it's just like this back and forth that never resolves. It's just wanting it, but not allowing yourself to have it. So, which is the same theme of a diet approach, right? It's like you're wanting it, but you're not allowing yourself to have it. So I'm sure there's something deeper in that too. There's a little bit of, that dichotomy. The one thing that did speak to me when you were just talking was about not allowing yourself to be happy. That's big because I know, other therapists I've worked with before have said that same thing about, well, if I get to this weight, all of a sudden I'm a different person. People are paying attention to me more, asking me, oh, how did you lose the weight? Oh, you look great. Like all the things that you thought you wanted to hear. But all of a sudden it's like, wait, I don't want to be the center of attention with everybody. I just want to be myself. I don't want to have to explain everything. I don't want to have to say anything. I just want to live my life and, feel or be healthier for whatever reason. But it's that allowing yourself to feel, maybe, I don't even know, maybe that's a thing, but to feel happy, to feel content.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing. It's different for everybody. I had one patient who she realized that when she got together with her friends, every time they got together, what they would talk about was what diet they were on. And when she started stepping out of that diet mentality and stepping into a place of understanding herself differently, learning how to relate to herself differently, turn her critic into a friend, all the things, deal with her past, create a vision for her future. She realized she had much less in common with her friends, and this was so disconcerting and upsetting to her. Now they had nothing to talk about. She started gaining weight again so she could be part of their diet talk. So it's different for everybody. Not everybody has this egregious sense of, oh my God, I'm going to be objectified and I must, stop that, or I'm going to leave my husband or my partner or whatever. But be really curious about your why, whether you're turning to food. If you're churning to food, there's a reason. It's either deprivation or you're trying to cope in some way. And sometimes that can be very tricky to figure out because we're so quick to turn to food that we don't even know we're being triggered by a situation or an emotion or thought. We think we're being triggered by food. And I'd like to give you an example that really illustrates that, which is this woman I call Jenna, and she, not her real name, and I can't use real names. So she came to me and she said, hey, Dr. Nina, maybe some of your other people are dealing with emotional eating, but she tells me she's a food addict and she can prove it. So I said, oh, well, do tell. She said, well, the night before she was chilling, Netflix and chilling, had a perfectly good day at work, watching TV, when all of a sudden, as she put it, Ben and Jerry was calling her name. She's like, calling my name. I am addicted to Chunky Monkey. I said, okay, well, wait a minute. What were you watching on TV before Ben and Jerry started calling for you? She tells me it's her favorite guilty pleasure. Charmed, her favorite show. And since she was doing something she enjoyed, there was no reason, or so she thought, that she would want to down a pint of ice cream. So I said, well, what was the episode about? She's like, oh, it's when this demon comes down and breaks the bond between the sisters and they start fighting and it gets really contentious and nasty and awful. And I looked at her and I said, oh, sisters fighting, huh? And she looked at me and went, oh, like literally that Macaulay Culkin Home Alone look. Because in that moment, she realized, as I had realized, that watching the show activated her own conflicts about her sister. And before it was able to reach her conscious awareness, she went to ice cream for comfort and distraction. If we had said like, okay, when ice cream calls your name, take a walk, journal, brush your teeth, do all the things, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere because it was a solution to the problem. The problem was her relationship with her sister and her inability to process that and comfort herself about it.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as we did that, and as soon as she learned to kind of find words to deal with her sister relationship without, by the way, ever talking with her sister, like, she still had to come to terms with their relationship and learn how to comfort herself with words. Ice cream stopped calling her name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to be very curious about why you are turning to food, which a diet cannot tell you why. A diet just tells you what to eat or not to eat. It doesn't help you understand those hidden motivations.
Yeah. So I'm wondering too, with that, couple things, but when you just were mentioning about dieting and hidden motivations and everything, if let's say you're on I don't know, let's just throw out whatever, XYZ diet, commercial diet, and they say, eat this, eat this, eat that, and don't eat more than this. If you're the type of person who usually goes to food to calm or to soothe, and you're on a diet trying to lose weight, and you're forced to not have those foods, then it seems like those feelings that you use food to deal with, it makes it even harder because you don't know how to deal with the feelings without food. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, you have to learn how to deal with the feelings without food.
Right.
And the problem that I have with dieting is that it creates deprivation. And actually, I don't know, you may be familiar with that study. I think it was in 2011 where they tried to prove food addiction. And the 3 reasons we binge: hunger, deprivation from dieting, and emotion, and as an emotional response. And by that, I don't mean I had a bad day, I want ice cream. It's more like using food to cope in some way. So they tried to prove the existence of food addiction, and they gave participants the instructions: eat your forbidden food. And the theory was, well, they are just addicted to this food. It's in their brain, and they're just going to start eating this, and they're not going to be able to stop. Instead, what happened was they ate less. They ate less. They had permission. Because they had permission. Similarly, like I tell this story a lot. When my daughter we were trick-or-treating with a friend, and the friend's mom was one of those like, you may have 2 pieces of candy and then you will bring it home and I will dole out 2 pieces until next Thanksgiving kind of a person. So this kid was like sneaking candy the whole time. Sneaking. She must have had like 30 pieces of candy. And at the end of the night, my daughter's like, hey, I'm starving. And my husband said, you have a king-size pillowcase full of candy. Like, have some candy. And my daughter, this was such a proud moment for me. She said, no, Dad, I want real food. Oh. So here's her friend who has been told deprivation, right? You can't have it. So she's eating 30 pieces of candy and probably getting a stomach ache. My daughter, who can have it or not have it, can choose not to have it. So part of the problem with diet mentality is it tells you can't have something, and it doesn't help you learn that you can actually have some of it, but not all of it. Right. Not avoiding those extremes. Right. Okay. So my next question for you then is kind of like rolling out of this one, but okay. If somebody, we're talking about healing earlier,
has gone through the work, has really identified emotions, healed their relationship with food, and now they want to but their blood pressure is out of control, their blood sugar is elevated, they're pre-diabetic, and they're technically obese and it's hurting their joints. At this point, once they're healed, are they ready to start making healthier choices with food, but also having grace and balance in the process? So I'm just wondering when it works, like when it begins to work.
Yes, and this is the problem that I have with intuitive eating is intuitive eating is fantastic, but it's really hard to be an intuitive eater if you are eating out of deprivation or as a way of coping. I call binge eating, emotional eating, stress eating, I call it a frenemy. It is a friend. It does something for you. It comforts you, it soothes you. If you're lonely, it symbolically fills a void. If you're eating so much that you're in physical pain, it converts emotional pain to physical. I mean, there are so many reasons why we turn to food. If we don't understand that and start working on that, it's almost impossible in my experience of 22 years only seeing people with eating disorders, with one exception, and her daughter had an eating disorder. My experience is that you cannot eat intuitively until you've really done the work.
It's true. I completely agree. Yeah, because it's hard to really know and trust your intuition if you haven't done the work. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so let's see, where was I? Oh, yes, I wanted to discuss a little bit about, well, one of the two things is about learning how to handle deprivation. So once you are emotionally healed and things are good, but just understanding that concept of deprivation. And there's so many ways in life we can feel deprived of something, maybe an experience with somebody, like fear of missing out kind of a thing. So that feeling of deprivation leaves, for a lot of people, is anxiety, and I don't know if depression gets that far, but there's a lot of anxiety around that. It's like the what ifs come up, and a lot of times, I know I've heard you talk about this before, that many times we're not ever taught how to handle deprivation, or just saying no. Like maybe we're used to getting whatever we want whenever we want, or everybody has a different experience. How does somebody who's good to go emotionally, but is just struggling with, I can't have whatever I want whenever I want it, how do you handle or start coping with that?
If they have done the work in processing their relationship with themselves, they are not in a I want what I want whenever I want it.
Okay.
They're gonna say, hey, first of all, let me back up and say, deprivation in life, like you mentioned, you can't have more friends, you can't order them on Amazon, you can't have love, you can't have a partner, you can't improve your relationship, you can't have a child, all these things that we can't just like order up and deprived of in life. Sometimes when you don't have enough, what can you always have more of? Food. So to really think symbolically, oh, I want more of this, but what do I really want more of in my life? What is missing in my life? And, most people have outgrown the I want whatever I want when I want it. Right? You have to learn, by the time you're an adult, you can't have whatever you want when you want it. But if you can have it, sometimes you realize you don't actually want it. Like if we're talking about food, it's that deprivation that makes you want it. But when you know you can have it, and I don't mean fool yourself into thinking yourself like, oh, you're doing this intuitive eating thing, but you don't really totally believe it, and you're not completely on board with it. When you really know that you can have it, you often choose to have less of it, like the people in the study. How are we doing on time? Quick example. This woman came to me and she told me that every day after work, she told herself she would not go to the drive-through. I think it was Carl's Jr. or maybe In-N-Out or whatever. Let's call it In-N-Out. She was not going to go to In-N-Out and get that vanilla milkshake. And every day, it was like her car drove to In-N-Out on its own volition, and she would have the vanilla milkshake. And she said, please help me stop. So I told her, you have to promise to do exactly what I tell you. She's like, I'll do anything. I'm desperate. I said, okay. No matter what, you're going to do what I tell you. Yes, I'll do anything. I said, okay, every day after work, I want you to go to In-N-Out and get a vanilla milkshake.
Mhm.
And she looked at me like maybe I was on crack. Maybe I was growing like a second head. Like she just looked at me like, what? She's like, no, I want it. I don't want what? And I said, just do it.
Mhm.
Day 4, she calls me. So we're supposed to meet the next week. Do I have to keep having these vanilla milkshakes? I'm really sick of them. So what happened? When she wasn't able to have them and it was all about deprivation, she
Mhm.
wanted them. She had to have them.
Mhm.
When she was told she had to have them, she could decide if she liked it, if she wanted
Mhm.
it, and if so, how much.
Mhm.
And so that really speaks to how creating deprivation for ourselves really causes us to want more. And when people allow themselves to have the thing they haven't been able to have, invariably what I hear is, it really wasn't that good. Like people who are like, I love Snickers more than life itself. And then they have a Snickers, but really because they are allowing themselves to, and they're like, it's not as good as I thought. Or I had
Mhm.
the birthday cake, but it wasn't that good. So I stopped
Yeah.
eating it. Who am I? Right? It really is setting, really changing your mindset about deprivation, and
Mhm.
breaking these food rules can dramatically change your relationship with food. And of course, as you're changing your relationship with yourself, which is to be kinder and to treat yourself
Yes.
as a friend.
Yes. Yes. In all respects, right? So for me as a dietitian, it's like all of those things are necessary for you, and it's I don't like really this cop out phrase, but a lot of times people will say, oh, all foods fit. Yeah, but it's like, or what's the other cop out one? It's everything in moderation, right? So that to me says, okay, should you have broccoli in moderation? And should you have um, ice cream in moderation? Should you have a salad in moderation? Should you have what's it called? Snickers in moderation, which is fine. I get that, like as far as like the healing part, and I've been there. But I'm saying is like once you're past that, as far as you're like just a general healthy person who wants to get healthy, it's not necessarily that like from your physiology. Um, but there's we're talking about so many levels of relationships with food and handling, you know, emotional issues and stuff like that. So it's really hard to say it because everybody hears that same thing, everything in moderation. Well, then it's like contradicted by diet rules. Then that's confusing. So
Also, it's
mhm.
what is moderation, and it still presumes some kind of a rule,
Mm.
as
Mhm.
opposed to when you have turned your inner critic into a friend, when you've recognized why you're eating instead of focusing on what you're eating, when you really are there for yourself and with yourself instead of against yourself,
Mm.
there's this natural wish to take better care of yourself.
Mhm.
So it's what I hear a lot is people saying, yeah, before I'd have the whole pizza and I just hated myself. Now I have a slice or two and I think, I don't like how this feels in my body.
Mm. Mhm.
More, they want to take care of themselves. They want to take care of their bodies, and they're more aware of how these foods feel
Mhm.
in their bodies. And sometimes, yeah, maybe they'll have the pizza or the cake or whatever, but
Mhm.
they're more likely to make the healthier choices naturally, like my
Mm.
daughter and at Halloween,
Mhm.
because they want real food. They're more tuned into what is it that's going to make them feel their best
Yeah,
instead
at the
of
end, right. Yeah,
food
once the meal's over.
that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, that's the difference. I kind of feel like sometimes depending on the population of people I'm talking to, it's either going to food with like a lot of emotion, just like anger and frustration. That's why I'm going to do this diet because I looked at my body. I was walking down the street and I saw myself reflection in the window, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. Or a picture. How did I get this heavy? And all of a sudden, there's like a barrage of anger and emotions, and it's like I'm going to start a diet tomorrow. And then it's coming at it with fear and anxiety and just not loving what you look like. So then it becomes very like a desperation thing. And then I'm gonna do like the other lady you mentioned, she's like, just tell me whatever to do, like whatever I need to do, just tell me what that is because I need to get over this. So it's just that coming in with like I call it a bonfire, like just woof. And then I've heard, other physicians say like you come in with a bonfire and bonfires fizzle out fast. But if you come in with a little kindling fire, and you come in with intention, and you come in with rationality and clear thought, then it's more likely going to keep kindling longer than coming in with a bonfire. So I was just thinking that maybe how you go at it, like you were saying, like where you're coming into it from, what place you're coming into it from, makes a big difference, right? In
Of course.
how long. Yeah.
And this, I hate, so two things I hear a lot. I hate my body. I can't stand my body. I want it to change. But I hear from body positivity that I'm supposed to love my body. And now I feel bad that I hate my body, but now worse that I don't also love my body. What's wrong with me? I can't love the body I hate.
I know, that's so true. I know. Well, there's such an extreme there too, in that body positivity. It's like, okay, it's great to love your body, and that's beautiful, but it's like, but if you love your body to unhealthy, and it's like you're living an unhealthy lifestyle, whether it's emotional, physical, whatever, but you're using it as a rationale for allowing to continue yourself in a healthy lifestyle. For me, it kind of gets sticky because it feels like it can be permission to keep binge eating, to keep being overweight, to keep having a lack of health. And then on the other end is the other mannequins that are really fit and skinny. So it's like, well, where's the in-between person? Like in the mall, where's the in-between person? Where's the middle person that represents all of the body, well, not most of them, body types.
And I'm going to say it's okay to not love and accept your body. It is okay to hate your body, even as long as you love yourself and are supportive of yourself as you are on a journey of healing and health. So many people think of their bodies as their only self. So they hate themselves. But if a friend said, oh, I hate my weight, I've gained so much weight, I've been doing emotional eating, whatever, you wouldn't say, yes, you're disgusting. I'm going to like you much better when you lose weight. It's like, okay, look, I love you. Like I do, right? Why aren't we that way to ourselves?
Yeah.
So I propose, hate your body. That's fine. Hate it. You do. So let's not pretend you don't.
Right.
Hate it, but be there for yourself and yourself just as you would a friend. Okay, I'm going to take, what can I do today for myself? How can I take my own side? How can I focus on my internal world? How can I meet my needs? How can I encourage myself instead of discourage myself? How can I express what's going on differently rather than repress it by stuffing it?
I love it. I love that. Yeah, that self-care angle. It's just, but true, not just saying self-care. It's really, owning up to what's actually happening and then making a choice or a decision to treat yourself like a friend, like you said. I love that. Okay, so before I finish up, I have one more question for you. So I know nighttime eating is a thing. I've talked to many people about it, and it's very common. What are some of the, maybe even some tips, maybe something we can use from a practical sense and understanding nighttime eating and what we can do when we come across it?
Okay, so here's why nighttime eating is a thing. In fact, my next book is called From Binge to Balance, How to Stop Binging at Night.
Cool.
Or something like that. All right, so here's why eating at night is an issue. During the day, we're busy. Our minds are occupied. We're working, we're taking care of kids or grandkids or whatever. We're just doing a lot of stuff. We're running errands. We've got things to do. At night, that's when we are more alone with ourselves, when thoughts and feelings might creep in that we don't want any part of. And so one way of escaping ourselves is to focus on food or eat or both. And so that's why nighttime eating is such a thing, because we just don't know how to be with ourselves. So a couple of strategies that you can do is, well, first, I always say, get rid of the scale, which has nothing to do with binge eating at night, but boy, it helps you throughout the day and night and your life. So just get rid of the scale, because a piece of plastic cannot, weigh your worth or your value.
Right.
One of the things I suggest, in addition to, if I weren't focused on food, I forgot to turn off my notifications, right? If I weren't thinking about food, what would be on my mind, right? If I wasn't if food wasn't on my mind, and I had like the Vulcan mind zap or whatever it was called, right? Just take out all thoughts of food and what's left. What would you be worried about? And it takes courage to look at that, but it's really important. So that's one part of it. And then, of course, learning to express and respond to yourself. But another thing you can do, I call it riding the binge wave. So think of it like surfing. When you see a wave, it builds and builds and builds and builds in intensity, and then it finally crests, and then it diminishes, and then it's gone. So the same thing with that urge to binge. So if you feel it, like you're being drawn to the kitchen, like, you know, you're being pulled into the Death Star in Star Wars, like resistance is futile, like you just can't. No, I'm mixing Star Wars and Star Trek.
same concepts.
You're just like pulled there. It's like a building up, building up, building up. Remember, if you could just surf it and last long enough, it's going to diminish. So even if you give yourself 30 seconds and then give yourself permission, if you still need to go to the kitchen, you're going to do it. But that 30 seconds can become 45 seconds, can become a minute, can become 3 minutes. And then you can really learn to be with yourself and figure this stuff out in a different way. So just remember, just ride the wave, go emotional surfing, and you'll be amazed at the difference it can make.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, because so in our group, you know, we have an eating window and a fasting window and so on. But like when we are outside of our eating window, of course, you know, each person can do technically whatever they want. I'm not saying, you know, but what I've learned, I think others have learned too in the group, is that they didn't realize that they were nighttime eaters until we, you know, created an eating window and a closed window. And it's like, oh, wow, when my window's closed for eating, I didn't realize how much I ate at night. And then, you know, we talk about like, what's going on, what actually is going on. I like what you mentioned about being even comfortable with yourself, like, and your thoughts and what's going on. It's not the food, it's you maybe even like needing a distraction from being with yourself. Like, oh, I can't stand this feeling. And even in our busy world, you know, with social media and everything coming at us all the time, we're always distracted with something. But when there's not a distraction and you're just being or watching your show or whatever, then what else do we have? What other, you know, comfort or blanket or distraction is there? But it's just us being with us. So that's huge. That's actually that's practice in itself, is just, like we said about riding that wave, like you just feel it building up and building up. It's like, or even like with us, like if, you know, if you're not eating at night and your body's used to eating at night, but you feel great, your energy's fine, but you feel like a little tummy rumbling and you're like, okay, this doesn't feel great, but I'm okay. My energy's good. I don't feel bad. But it's like writing it out, like, okay, well, let's see what happens in 15 minutes. Will it go away? And the grumbling goes away because it's more of a conditioned response. And like, oh, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I slept really good. I didn't go to bed on a full stomach. I woke up feeling not nauseous or like having a food hangover. I just feel really energized, you know. So it's allowing yourself, like we're talking about, to feel, or to even maybe acknowledge how you're feeling.
And
sounds
then
like it's a big,
yeah, and then learn to our culture doesn't help us. Our culture doesn't teach us how to respond to our feelings. Our culture says, don't have feelings. Like, you're weak if you have them and you're strong if you can push them away. But here's the thing, we cannot ignore them. We cannot drop them. We cannot positive think them away or gratitude them away. The only way to get rid of feelings is to actually feel them and express them and onto ourselves. And this is the other reason why people get it wrong, which is a lot of the times we respond to ourselves by saying things like, it could be worse, it's not that bad. Or people say that to us, it's not that bad, it could be worse, look on the bright side. This toxic positivity then makes us, now we feel bad for whatever reason, and now we feel bad because we can't just let it go, and that's when it gets stuffed down. So learning to be in relation to ourselves in a new way is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And it has, because our feelings are what keep us connected to ourselves and to each other. So to normalize them and learn how to express them and respond to ourselves is everything.
Yeah, that's pivotal. I mean, that would change everything. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Okay, so as we finish up then, thank you so much. This is like, I could probably talk with you for hours. This is so good. Okay, so I just want to share a couple of things Dr. Nina has for us. So one of the things you mentioned to me was an offer, or a giveaway. So, and it's called the Binge Buster Roadmap. So what's involved in this particular giveaway?
That I give you all the steps that I've I've talked about today, but I give you more in-depth responses. I also show you a way to figure out, if you're not talking to me, who can say, and what about that? And what about that? How can you figure out what your unconscious triggers are?
Mhm.
And I really just give you a roadmap and a path to the steps you need to take to create a healthier relationship with yourself and food. And of
Okay.
course, to go together.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that practicality of it for each person, for you. You know, it's like how does that translate to what I need? I mean, it's nice to know generally, but how does it work specifically for me? So, okay. So if you guys see, I put in the chat. Also, when I post this video, also include all of these links in there so you guys can access it anytime. Oh yeah, let's see. What do you have?
Shamelessly promote my new journal.
Yes, yes.
So as you guys know, I wrote the Binge Cure 7 Steps to Outsmart Emotional Eating. And then I wanted to help people even more, give them something to do, not just something to think about and a little bit to do in this book. So I created the Binge Cure Journal, which just came out last week, and it is a deep, deep dive. It is a guided journal, and the title says it all: a guide to liberating yourself from emotional eating, taking control of your life, and feeling good in your body. This will help you do exactly that, because it's all filled with, prompts and things to think about and do. So I'm really super proud of it.
That's exciting. Yeah. I know, like I was saying, we've come a long way, and it's so neat to watch, watch you do your thing. It's probably, is this something that you've kind of dreamed of or had a vision for years ago when you started on your journey in this area, or?
It just developed. It went from, writing one book. Actually, the publisher asked me to write the book, which I was just like, what? Really weird and cool. But, and then it just evolved into, okay, now mainstream, now this, or people would call the show and say, well, what can I do? And I just thought, now that I've written the book that I needed them to read, now I need to give them a journal, a guided journal, a guide, like a workbook really is what it is, towards like implementing the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love it. And that's the thing. It's like that practicality is what people really need, right? In order to make it happen. Learning is great, but then doing is where the change comes. So exactly. Very cool. Okay. I know we have a few minutes, but does anybody, I'll look at the chat box real quick. If you have any brief questions, I'll look at them. Otherwise, what we'll do, if you think of something later on, I'm going to post this video on YouTube and then also in our group and also in our group's course. So if you have questions about anything, or about what Dr. Nina talked about, or need more explanation about something, you can put your comments in the comment section in Facebook or on YouTube. You can do it, or also in our group, or just in our group course. So you can comment there wherever you're watching it, and then either I can defer to her and have her answer the questions that I don't really know for sure about. And I also put up her links for her social media, so you can get in touch with her. Also her books, I'm going to add that also to this post. And then that way you can, if you have questions for her, you can just get to her directly. And then also her radio show is awesome. I love it. I learned so much. Thank you for doing that, Dr. Nina. It's such a cool thing, to be able to share. And sometimes I really appreciate people who have knowledge and wisdom about something and choose to share it and keep it to themselves. Because for me, it feels like if they don't, it's a disservice to the world and the community who actually needs that for their personal healing. So I really appreciate that you do that. That's really big. And sharing it in the written word as well too. So thank you. Okay, so one question real quick.
Answer Terry's question. She did not have issues with milkshakes or other treats. Yes, we did have to do more work with her on how to comfort herself and how to identify what was going on, express and respond to herself. But it wasn't like she stopped having milkshakes and then she liked cake. She really, when she took away deprivation, that did it for her. And she's like, most people don't have such a radical change as that in 4 days. I mean, it took more than that, but yes, it is possible. She's just such a great example of when you take away deprivation, the kinds of results that you can get.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. And then Kari, did you also ask, says, what were the 3 reasons we binge? Oh yeah. I don't know if you could answer that, but
that was that hunger, when we stop, so when we're ravenous, we can't stop eating because we're so hungry. Deprivation, the kind that comes from weight loss diets, and of course, binge eating disorder, which is eating as a way of coping with something internal.
Okay, cool. And then Kari or Annette says, truly, really. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, hungry, deprivation, emotional. All right. Okay. Is that the last of them? Oh, yeah. Kari says, thank you. Annette, Dr. Nina, wonderful information for all of us. Yay. Okay. And then you got that one. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, if you have more questions, you can reach out to me, reach out to her, and we'll get you set up and covered with what you are needing help with. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'll share all those links with you all wherever you find this. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, if you're up for it, we'll talk more, but I would love to have you as kind of like our resident, question answer as it comes up. So I appreciate it. But you can also follow her in her group too, which is a great place to go for information that ties into everything we're talking about. So anyway, thank you again. And I hope we'll keep in touch. We'll keep doing our thing. And
thank you for having me. It was really a delight to be here, and I would be happy to do it again.
Yay. So we'll probably bring you back on for more stuff. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.